Welcome back to Writer's Block. Today I'm going to discuss some tips and tricks of how to edit your first draft. Both me and Chris are writers. I've published a short illustrated story myself. He's in the process of getting beta readers for his first book, and I'm in the process of drafting my first and second novel. The editing process for a lot of people is the worst part of writing a book, and often a lot of people actually give up at this point because it's too difficult. I personally actually think it's the funnest part of the work. I think first drafting is the hardest, and then editing is actually a lot easier. So when it comes to editing, there are 4 main types that professional editors will do. One important thing to say first off is even if you are hiring a professional editor for your book, you still need to edit it yourself prior to giving it to them, because your first draft will be absolutely shit. Everyone says for every book. Professional edit isn't going to be able to fix absolutely everything that's wrong with your first draft. You need to put some of the work in yourself first. And also, if you give a professional editor a manuscript that hasn't been edited at all, they're going to think you're a bloody idiot. There are 4 main types of editing when it comes to novel writing. There is developmental edits, which are for the storyline and content edits, such as characters, world building, and stuff like that. Then there's line edits, which are the paragraphs, style, and the flow of the story. Copy edits, which are done on a sentence level, looking at punctuation and grammar. And then finally, there is the proofread, which reads through the entire thing over, looking for the small mistakes that have been missed in the previous 3 edits. Another important reason for why you need to edit your book before you give it to a professional editor is because you need to know what it is they need to work on. Because different editors will have specialities on different things. So you need to tell them what it is that you want them to focus on in your work and what you feel are the main issues that you're stuck on. This is also a good time to get a sensitivity reader, especially seeing as nowadays in the later, a lot of authors are being called out for rather harmful narratives in their story that could have easily been avoided if they had hired sensitivity readers. So the first thing you should do when you're trying to edit your book is reread through the entire thing as a whole, but don't try edit anything. Just point out, make comments, notes on the side of issues you notice, but don't try to edit it right then and there. Just read through the entire story. Make notes of when there's a story issue, when there's character mistakes, when there's a plot hole, when there's world building issues, when there's storylines or character backgrounds that you've contradicted yourself maybe in one chapter compared to another chapter. This will be the first building blocks of developmental edits. So you should make notes of what needs to be changed and mark which chapters have the plot holes appeared and which scenes the characters act out of character unintentionally. You need to fix these things first, because there's no point going through and fixing the sentence structure and grammar issues if you're going to have to rewrite the entire scene. An easy way for you, when you're first rereading it, to know where you need to work on is to color code the types of edits you need. Highlight the passages that need certain issues, so highlight, say, blue things, it's plot holes, green things are character mistakes, red things are world building issues, and so on and so forth. So that way you can go through and look for all the red things and I'm going to work on the world building issues right now. And you can just go through the manuscript and look for everything you've marked in red. Once you've done your first reread and looked and made notes of what needs to be fixed, it can be quite daunting to go into and fix it all. The idea of having to edit a 300 to 500 page manuscript is quite daunting. Best way to do it is edit it by chapter instead of an entire book. At the beginning, look at your work in progress as a bunch of connected short stories, and then when you're done this, then look at it as a whole. This would mean look at the plot holes within each chapter, the plot holes that are for the main plot that go over the entire story. Look at them last, once you've gone through chapters. A really useful way for you to help edit your manuscript is to listen to it. Because when you read it in your head, you generally overlook a lot of the errors because you read what you think you wrote and read it as the story appears in your head and not actually how it sounds on the page. By reading out loud, a lot of the errors will be much more obvious, from spelling errors, chunky sentences, misused words.
Reading out loud will also make clutch words much more obvious. Microsoft Words can read your work out loud for you.
Or you can do snippets on Google Translate.
For Microsoft Word, you can also change how fast they read it back to you and what the voice of the person reading it back to you is. So this might be a good way to go through and change the different settings to find the one that helps you the best. If you have a learning disability such as dyslexia, changing the font or background color can drastically help in reading your work and noticing mistakes. Some fonts are worse for dyslexia than others. As much as people hate Comic Sans, the shapes of the letters actually makes the reading a lot easier. Obviously, you don't want your book to be published in Comic Sans unless for some reason you do. So what I would generally advise is change the font to chapter or passage you're editing now to a different, more stylish font to Comic Sans and whatnot. And then once you've finished that edit, then go back and change it back to its original font. By changing the background color of the page, you kind of trick your brain into thinking this is something new and not something you've seen before, and so your brain will be reading it as a brand new thing. The copy editing will be the most tedious type of editing, seeing as you have to go look through the entire manuscript for punctuation errors and grammar and whatnot. The developmental issue editing will actually be the hardest one, because that's where you're looking at things that are wrong with your story as a whole. Because developmental issues are where you'll have the potential of having to rewrite the entire story, rewrite the entire chapter. So that's a few tips and tricks of how to edit your work in progress. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll have a video next week from Chris. The links to our website, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, and Discord will be down in the description. Next week on Saturday, we will have the first meeting of our book club in Bonnie Library. If you want to join us in that, we will also be discussing it on Discord and Reddit. The first book we're reading is I, Robot by Isaac Asimov. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.